Hey, you guys ready? And then I need you guys to bring your resumes to me so I can submit them for the CFA challenge. Anybody who wants to do the CFA challenge, you have to drop off your resume to me as soon as possible. All right. Did you go to that event?
No, I'm not going to take it.
No, it's okay. So let's go through this. I wrote this lecture probably like 10 years ago, and it's only become even more and more relevant every single year since then. And especially now with the launch of fintech, makes it even more relevant than ever before. And now with fintech companies and large financial services companies like BlackRock and Goldman and Merrill and JP and the hedge funds and the shadow banks and automated and machine learning and artificial intelligence is being applied to finance and trading and risk management. This makes even more sense today than it did 10 years ago. So what I'm going to talk about is really the criteria for financial product development and innovation, either inside of a firm or outside of a firm, either inside of an established company or outside by a startup company. Okay, I'm already working with a couple startups now, so I kind of understand what's going on here. So the first is financial product and innovation. Financial services companies are extremely creative. Their financial services and the securities that they develop based off their balance sheet, based off the identification within the marketplace, is extremely important. The key to this whole thing is execution. Can you get the product or the process or the service to market as quickly as possible to commercialize it and generate revenue and cash flow? So here are the criteria. Criteria for financial product and process innovation. First, the company and the founders go through a constant environmental scan of the marketplace, constantly looking at the marketplace and identifying market opportunities to bring either new processes, techniques, or products to market. So they're constantly looking at the environment. So this environmental scan is ongoing. It's continuous and contiguous. It's constant. The main drivers of environmental changes in the marketplace is either through the market itself, competition, or regulation, or even deregulation. So if you go back to the Glass-Steagall Act of the 1930s, it was really to separate the investment banks and the commercial banks. Then it wasn't until you had the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act of 2000, which was signed by President Clinton, that basically deregulated the financial services industry and allowed for investment banks and banks to basically merge. Within 10 years after 2000, actually 8 years after the signing of the Gramm-Leach-Bliley Act, we basically fell into a financial crisis the worst since the Great Depression, because the deregulation allowed the investment banks not only to merge and leverage up their balance sheets, but also manufacture derivative products off balance sheet from their balance sheet and allowed them to lever up the system. And then eventually the system figured it out. There were these stresses, and the whole thing blew up, caused a financial crisis, caused a recession, and the central bank, the Federal Reserve Central Bank, had to print $5.3 trillion to clear all of the bad product that was sitting on the bank's balance sheets and throw those bad assets and securities onto the Federal Reserve's balance sheet. And the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, as you know, peaked out at 5.3 trillion, dropped to 4.3, and is now running at about 3.7 trillion after they, unwound their balance sheet or allowed those securities to unwind themselves. And if you look at the organizational structures of the financial services industry, particularly the investment banks and commercial banks, prior to the financial crisis and after the financial crisis, they've gone through a significant restructuring of their organizational structures. Before, they were more trading-oriented, proprietary trading units, leveraging up the balance sheet, and really focused on trading profits. Where after the financial crisis, under the Dodd-Frank Act, there was a restructuring in the industry, and if you look at these investment banks, there's really no investment banks anymore. Most of the major investment banks became commercial banks under the Bank Holding Act, and they restructured the company with a focus on investment management, real estate lending, and commercial bank lending. So very, very different organizational structures. So regulation is a key component, and Wall Street is constantly looking at Washington, looking at not only what types of policies are coming down that will cause their business models to change or their organizations to change, but they're also constantly lobbying Congress. So they have a direct input into the policy development process and a direct input on policy outcome and policy administration. No other industry is as powerful as Wall Street in their control over Washington. What you have to understand and what you need to know about environments, particularly internal environments, in regards to creating cultures that develop product or are creative environments, is you have to understand the industrial and individual psychologies. Now, a lot of you are going to go on and become managers. You're going to have to understand the industrial psychology and individual psychologies, not only individuals by themselves, but also individuals as groups, okay, within the organizations. And what it is you're going to need to do to be able to motivate those individuals to do what you need them to do when you need them to do it. So when I look at office buildings, they're basically just like manufacturing plants. Everybody walks in, they sit down, they basically work, they design, they produce, these services, you might work, 40, 50, 60, maybe 80 hours a week, but you're basically in a physical plant where services are actually produced just like physical products in a manufacturing environment. So you have to understand the industrial psychology and culture of the company, and does it produce individuals and groups that are highly creative and can respond to the marketplaces very rapidly. One of the biggest problems within the industrial environment is groupthink. You have individuals that are highly charismatic, that can sit around the table and basically manipulate you psychologically to get you to do what they want you to do, either through referent power, expert power, or coercion, or bullying in some cases. So you have to understand not only individual psychologies, but also group psychologies. The biggest problem with groups is that a lot of individuals just want to be free riders within the group, so they go along with what's going on instead of creating critical debate and debating the weaknesses and strengths of the product or the process, and they just go along with the individual who's charismatic, and that could actually take them down a road to success or maybe a road to demise. So groupthink's one of the biggest problems in these industrial environments. And then cognitive dissonance. I mean, the company, the divisions, groups, the individuals will be under stress because the environment's changing, the company can't change fast enough culturally or organizationally, so it creates a cognitive dissonance that at some point forces the company to change, either under competitive pressures or regulatory pressures. So there has to be an environment of organizational change or change management. Startup companies are good at that. especially now with fintech companies, but the larger organizations are really hard to have an environment of constant change, because not only is it expensive, but people are entrenched within their positions. They have power, they have money along with those positions, and to change could actually jeopardize their role and responsibilities within the organization. So organizational change and change management, and when the pressures do emerge, and they are extreme, then there has to be a wholesale restructuring of the whole organization to basically realign with the changes within the marketplace. The other requirement is you need cultural leadership. These leaders within the organizations are models, role models for a lot of people around them and people within the organizations. And a lot of people want to be like these individuals within the organizations that are exuding charismatic leadership. And the process in which they go through to become like these leaders is through the process of self-efficacy. And the realization for individuals within these dynamic environments is they look at failure as not some genetic predisposition, but a lack of information. And they're willing to take risks, and they're willing to fail. But again, they don't look at it as that they can't do it. It's just that they tried, they failed because there was a lack of information or lack of resources. So they try again until they succeed. There also needs to be a clear strategy. There needs to be clear strategy, there needs to be clear tactics, there needs to be clear operational plans. There needs to be clear, measurable, and achievable metrics. This should be all review, or you are getting close to your last semester within your program, so this is basically a capstone for some of you. It's nothing new, it's just basically just a reintroduction of the best practices for creative, innovative companies that create innovative products, but we're focusing on financial services, okay, as opposed to Apple iPhone, but it's the same thing. You also need to, once you set this up, then you basically have the environment to start producing innovative product. So product and process innovation. One of the requirements for product and process innovation is a system, an ERP system. Anybody know what ERP is? No? You didn't learn this in your operations research and supply chain management class? No? No? Really? I'm surprised. ERPs are basically enterprise level systems, Oracle, IBM, and other large enterprise level software providers develop and provide ERPs for large organizations, because what it is, it's knowledge base that actually allows the organization to store all of their knowledge, documentations, project notes, products, processes that have been developed in the past. Resource allocations can also be done through these enterprise resource planning systems, so that if let's say there's an environmental change or a regulatory change, and the senior level managers realize that they need to develop a new product or a process, and they remember that there was a product and a process similar to that was done maybe 2-3 years ago, they can go back to the ERP system and look at the teams and the documentation that built that product before, deploy that same team, maybe with some augmentation for the teams, things changed, and they can basically be up and running to develop that process and product in a fraction of the time, because before they had to build it from scratch. This time they're not building it from scratch. They're basically just modifying the process. So they can come to market very quickly, the resources are less, and the startup time and the costs are less for the product development. So ERP systems is a software or technology that's used for product and process innovation. The most important thing is to recognize the needs, wants of the market. So you see the change, you recognize the needs and the wants from the client, and you basically start the implementation process to develop the product through your research and development arm. So you have to have a once you recognize it, you go into product development. This product development is ongoing. These companies, they're run by research. Does everybody know what R&D is? And the research and development arm within the company. These are all the financial engineers, all the technology people working with the engineers, the mathematicians, and the senior level executives at the tactical level, and working with people at the operational level to be able to constantly looking for opportunities in the marketplace, and then, having your R&D group basically start the implementation of the testing, the beta testing phase for the product. The goal under product development is to design the product with the attributes to solve the problem. I like to tell this story. When I was working at New York Life in 2010, so we were basically a little over 2 years through the financial crisis, there was clients pounding basically on their sales people saying, I've just lost 30 to 50% of my portfolio value. We do not want to go through that again. And what we want to do is, since a lot of us were thinking about retiring in 2008, 9, and 10, we now can't retire. And we're probably not going to have enough money for retirement, so we're probably going to run out of money at some point in time as I spend through my wealth when I reach retirement age. So New York Life, could you do us a favor, and could you develop guaranteed annuity products for us, both fixed annuities and variable annuities? And within less than a year, probably around 9 months, New York Life, which is a 167-year-old insurance company, so you wouldn't think that product innovation would come from such an old company like that, but they're extremely innovative. They were able to come to market within 9 months, delivering a guaranteed fixed annuity product that basically stated that I will give you $1 million when I'm 50. Here's an example. By the time I'm 70 and 20 years old, you will pay me $100,000 for the rest of my life. Guaranteed. Backed by the insurance company's balance sheet. Within less than a year, New York Life controlled over 60% of the fixed annuity market. They were the first to come to market. They had the balance sheet and the brand, and they were able to capture the market. Currently, they still own 40% of the market. And then on the variable side, actually the annuity that basically tracks the stock market, they came out with a variable annuity product that basically stated that you could pay us a point on assets under management, and we would sell you a 7-year put option. So if the stock market ever went down significantly, let's say you put in $1 million, the market goes down, your portfolio is only worth $750,000, New York Life would give you $250,000 to make you whole again. And what you could do is over 3 times over a 3 7-year periods, you could, as your assets accumulate within the annuity, you could lift the 3 times every 7 years. So as your portfolio goes up, they would lock in your wealth. As the portfolio goes up, they would lock in your wealth, and you have one more time, as the portfolio went up, you would lock in your wealth, and it would last for 7 years. So basically guaranteeing and protecting your wealth. So it's basically, you were buying portfolio insurance, is what you were doing. Okay, they didn't call it a put option, but it acted just like a long put, or a real put. So the next is, we talked about the attributes. So the attributes for those products were guarantees, okay, because people didn't want to lose any money. So once you design the product, then you got to put it into production. You got to beta test it, focus groups, panel surveys, you have to test it, and then get a read on the market, so you got to do marketing research. Once you've done all that, you've tested it, and you've standardized it as a contract, you can now start to manufacture it and distribute it. Some companies don't have a distribution network. Some companies do have a distribution network. New York Life obviously has a distribution network. Some do, some don't. So the question then becomes, do you have an existing distribution network? If you do, great, because then you don't have to build it or buy it. But if you don't, you gotta do the capital budgeting and decide if you're gonna build it or buy it. And is your net present value gonna be positive? And your IRR greater than your cost of capital? So are you gonna buy it, or are you gonna build it? And a lot of these financial services firms, particularly the Goldmans and JP Morgans and those types of companies, are constantly looking for small startup companies, ready to scale, that they can take out and fill that either distribution niche or the product development niche. So you got to look at your channel distribution. Am I going to distribute it through my existing networks? What are my channel distribution networks? Well, some companies just, they really don't care. They'll white label the product. They'll basically market it through another entity, and they'll distribute it through their network. So they'll say, okay, fine, TD Ameritrade, if you want to white label our ETF, that's fine. We'll give you all the algorithms, we'll give you the back tests and everything. We'll do a licensing agreement with you. You can call it a TD Ameritrade up-down ETF, whatever you want, we don't care, just as long as we get our licensing fees. And then you have to look at the different distribution networks, and you got to figure out which ones are the best, and you got to come up with some kind of distribution mix that's going to maximize the revenue from the deployment of those products or deployment of the product. Is it branches? Is it virtual? Is it online? What's the distribution network? Is it through your existing bank branches, or is it through the Registered Investment Advisory Network, which has hundreds of thousands of individuals? Also, your supplier network. Your supplier chains, supply chains, networks. Maybe you don't have the capabilities of the product and the process, so you outsource it to somebody else. They basically plug in, they become a supplier to you, and you distribute the product and process through your distribution network to your clients. Okay, but you got to do the optimization also here. So there's optimization in the distribution networks, there's optimization in the supplier chains. The next is, now we're starting to get into the fun stuff. it was in the finance industry. I thought it was in finance before I went to Schwab. I thought I was a financial analyst, financial economist, managing director, index services. I thought it was in finance. I didn't know I was in marketing. So once I went to Schwab, I figured out I'm working with the marketing department with all these brilliant marketing people. They basically just took over the process and commercialized the product. So basically these large organizations, you look at them as financial institutions, they're really marketing shops. That's what they are. So you can go into finance, but you end up in marketing. You can go into marketing and end up in finance. You can go both ways. You can go into law and you end up, working in securities law, and you're ending up manufacturing securities for distribution through banking and financial services networks. Did you know, as a securities attorney, you could be actually in the marketing arena if you were the one designing the legal contracts around the individual security instruments? Could be derivatives, could be stocks, bonds, it could be anything. So business development, marketing, and sales. First thing you have to do is you got to do the marketing research. This is where your business analytics comes in, your master's in data analytics with a finance focus. So you do the marketing research and you identify the segments. Segmentation analysis. It's also called stratification. You're looking at the different segments of the marketplace. You have different products basically targeted towards different segments within the marketplace. Could be gender, could be race, could be age, could be wealth, could be industry sector. And especially now, because we're all basically, Google and YouTube and every Facebook. I mean, they all have our information. They're all using big data, marketing research, segmentation analysis to basically identify and push products to us. They can't market financial products and services because it's a highly regulated industry, which made it really hard for us to use social media as financial advisors. But again, we're doing the same thing. We're just doing things under the regulations to be able to identify the segments of the marketplace. Once you've identified the segments within the marketplace, you want to optimize those segments. Figure out what segments you want to focus on and optimize it. Design the products and sell into those segments to try to maximize the revenue. So you got to do another optimization process. You need to identify your target markets. After you conduct the segmentation analysis, then you got to target the markets. You got to figure out what markets you're going to sell into. How much time, effort, advertising money, how much opportunity cost are you going to put in to these target markets to sell into? And these markets, these target markets are going to be broken up into psychographic segmentation. I'm like a baby boomer, hippie dude, something like that. And then there's, the hipsters, the techie hipsters, the 20 millennial types. You're not selling the same product and process to me as though you would sell it to a hipster, millennial. It's two different markets with two different messaging and two different types of sales processes. So you have to understand the psychographics, demographics. I have a lot of colleagues that used to focus on, the women's market, the African American market, the Hispanic market, the Chinese market. I mean, they were doing it by community groups, different segments, psychographic demographics. Also business segments. people were just focusing on tech as a segment. Some people were not only focusing on business segments, but also business size. I only want to focus on large cap companies to provide the financial services. I only want to focus on mid cap companies. I want to focus on principals and founders and startup companies at the small cap level. What are you targeting? Once you identify the target market, then you can start putting together the advertising. And of the different types of advertising that you're going to use, you're going to identify the optimal advertising mix. So again, you're going to do another optimization. So depending on the demographics, what's my optimal advertising mix? How much money am I going to spend on social media advertising, billboards, radio, TV, you know, other forms of advertising? And at the end of the day, you have to have a return on cost. You know, there's got to be a break even, there's got to be IRR, there's got to be a positive NPV, so you're basically conducting the same capital budgeting exercise that you did to not only launch the product, but you're doing it again on the advertising dollars. Okay, what's your return on cost? So you got to figure out the optimal advertising mix in your advertising campaigns. In your goal of advertising, what do you think the ultimate goal is for all this?
Generate profit.
Exactly. So at the end of the day, you want to focus on generating fees. Right? Could be fees on selling the product, could be fees on assets under management, AUM. Also commissions. That's the stuff I like. So there's multiple revenue streams. I mean, as an investment advisor under Series 66, I can sell my own research. I can get assets under management, and I can charge an assets under management fee. If I'm selling insurance or annuities, I can get a commission. Some are reoccurring, some are one-off types of revenue generators. After the advertising, D is client prospecting. The reason why I'm doing this lecture is because one of my friends, Jack Shaw, he was one of the top commercial real estate investment brokers in the East Bay for years. And he said your students don't know anything about sales. A lot of them end up going into sales, but they don't know anything about sales. They don't understand the sales cycle, the process. They don't understand this whole thing. So I designed a lecture to meet that requirement, along with the memos. The memos were the other one. Another one of my colleagues said your students don't know how to write memos, so you should train them how to write memos. So I introduced that too. So client prospecting. So when you do the advertising, it basically generates activity into the firm or to sales individuals. So the prospecting is pretty much done by the larger advertising, either the corporation's doing it or the individuals doing the advertising, which is basically client prospecting. So the goal in client prospecting is to lock in the client. Is to lock in the client through some kind of sale. Now, client prospecting is excruciatingly painful in the financial services industry. I can send out mailers, I can do radio and TV, I can do advertising, I can do billboards, I can do all kinds of stuff. That's going to bring in some prospects. So then, you know, I'm not only receiving calls, but I'm making calls. So I probably make like, you know, over 100 calls a week. That gets me in front of 10 clients. I got to go meet with them, spend an hour each just to meet with them the first time, just to get them to trust me. I take a bunch of notes. What triggers them? Is it greed or fear? Is it family? Is it ego? What drives their motivation? Then I basically go back and I write up my notes and I basically put together a presentation, and I go back and I meet with the individual again, and I basically make the presentation and we go back and forth. And if I'm successful, I get the client or the prospect motivated to buy from me the financial service or the service. And we basically agree that we're gonna move forward on it, we're gonna start the application processes, and we're gonna start the paperwork. The paperwork is usually pretty long, a lot of it can be done online, a lot of it can be done in person. And during that time period of when you're filling out and when you've delivered the paperwork to set up the accounts or get them through underwriting on the insurance or whatever it is, they can always change their mind, right? Because they talk to their wife or they talk to their husband or they talk to their brother that just happens to be in the same industry that basically stole your prospect, stole your client. Because for some reason, I don't know why, some people would rather do business with their brothers and sisters than to do it with me. So again, once you've sold the person on a product, you got them locked in. If you get a client locked in, what does that allow you to do? I now got the client. Woo! Right? What now can I do?
Upsell?
Exactly, I can upsell them, I can sell them more products, services, exactly. So I can do that. When you're doing the prospecting and you're doing the conversions, and that's really important too, that once you prospect the client, you gotta understand your conversion rate. How many emails did I send out? How many responses did I get? How many people did I follow up? How many people did I set up a meeting with? How many people did I meet with? How many people did I follow up with? How many people did I get back to? How many people did I convert, to a sale? And then how many people got through the sales process and into a follow-up phase, into customer service? Once I got them in customer service, I got them locked in. Now I can sell them more product, I can cross-sell, or I can upsell. Cross-sell, I brought them in because they rolled over their 401k into an IRA, so I got their retirement account income. Oh, by the way, you live, in San Francisco, you got an $800,000 mortgage, you got 2 kids in private school, and your wife's, working as a truck driver. That guy probably needs at least $1 million or $2 million of life insurance to cover everybody, just to make sure if anything ever happens, everybody's taken care of. So that would be a cross-sell on that one. Or I brought them in on the life insurance, but I rolled over their 401ks into an IRA and consolidated that. Now I got assets under management, I'm managing that. So I can sell both. So it's really the conversion rate at the end of the day. And if you got it locked in, you're getting recurring income. Now that's kind of why I like the Northwestern model a little bit better, because I can underwrite, all of these insurance policies, and if I leave the company, I still get residuals from the insurance policies that I wrote. If I go to New York Life, I get nothing. Some of these other companies, I don't know what it is, like at AXA and some of these other companies, but some of them will allow you to build your book, your client book, and you can sell the book back to the company when you leave, or you can sell the book to another company. And a lot of people monetize their efforts over a 10, 20-year career by selling their book for $1 million or $2 million, which is kind of nice. But if you go to a captive insurance or a captive company, you're almost locked into those guys. Okay, so you got to kind of stay there, unless the opportunities to go somewhere else are pretty high. So you got to do your own cost-benefit analysis to figure that out. The other that's really important to understand is to accelerate the conversion cycle or the sales cycle. So if I can underwrite, I kind of got into the business after a couple of years. I was doing 10 life insurance policies or 10 rollovers a month. Now I'm doing 20 a month. Now I got a team, I'm doing 30 a month. So basically the acceleration of the sales cycle is key to revenue generation, not only for you individually, but also for the company. The other is scale, where you're working on larger deals. So now I'm doing enterprise level benefits, providing those to small startup companies. Or I used to do 10 $1 million policies per month. Now I'm doing $10 million policies per month. The time that it takes for me to do a $10 million policy and a $1 million policy is basically the same. So over time, it will be scaling to the enterprise level at some point in time. So larger deals. Then the next one is CDE, is customer feedback. So you have to be thinking, you gotta be listening to your clients constantly. And then you go back to the product designers and you give them the input from your clients so that they can develop the new products so that you can sell them the new products to the client. So there's a feedback loop. Back into the process. And it's customer services, or customer service. Now to be able to do all of this part right here, this part down here, you have to have a software application. What kind of software application am I using? What am I using? Prospecting, locking in, conversion rates, communications. What? I'm not using the ERP. ERP is at the enterprise level. So what kind of software application am I using? On the corner of First and Mission Street in downtown San Francisco.
CRM.
Got it. So you got to be using the CRM, a customer relationship management system. Basically log and report all the conversations from the clients in the system. I basically toggle the system to toggle me, to basically make a call, or it sends out an automatic email to follow up with the client for 3 months or 6 months, 9 months, whatever they say. I can do standardized emails. I can do phone calls to somebody inside my company that will initiate the call to the individual and then get me on the line once the person's on the phone. So the customer relationship management system is key. Okay. And then again, this feedback point right here, again, you're communicating back into the system, into the product development stage, the product attributes. Communicating back to product attributes of the clients. And you're doing it all over again. Okay, so let's do 5 down. So how do companies look at this? How much time do I have? How much? How much?
16.
How much?
Minutes, 16.
60? Okay, I'll keep going. All right, so there's 2 product, process, technology theories. And I hear about this stuff all the time when we're reading about innovative companies. The first theory is the S-curve. For a lot of you, this is all new use. For some of you, it's new. You should have learned this in your operations research. Okay. What's the S-curves? And companies understand these industry structures. So you have the we'll talk technology first, and then we'll talk product. Okay. So these are basically S-curves. Okay. IBM, Salesforce, Cisco, Apple, it's all the same thing. And this is time. And this is technology. And successful companies develop technologies continuously over time. They develop new technologies consistently, continuously over time. And you just they just continue to develop new technologies constantly over time. That's why the market caps are so huge for these companies. Because everybody's valuing the firm at its maximum, because if you go back in time and you look at the success rate of them to be able to develop these technologies and bring them to market, they're good at it, and they do it over and over and over again. You know, companies can do that consistently and continuously over time and develop new technology products and processes over time. The marketplace is gonna, at some point in time, is gonna realize that these are successful companies. The top 5 banks are extremely successful. JP Morgan, B of A, Wells Fargo, Goldman Sachs, US Bank. I mean, these are all really successful companies. That's why they control over 50% of all the assets in the banking system. They wouldn't have that market share if they weren't good at what they do. And they're really good at what they do. So what happens is the market realizes and starts to assume a revenue growth path. Okay, a revenue growth path. And the equation, I'm just going to use the Gordon growth model because I think it does a really good job of illustrating this. If I take cash flows, T equals infinity, so future cash flow is going out forever, and that's how people think. Divided by your expected return, or return on equity, or expected return on equity, minus the growth rate of the cash flows forever, it's going to give you the value of the company. Now, if I can max, by innovating these fintech or tech technologies consistently over time, the market is going to assume that the company can continue to grow its cash flows forever. So it's going to maximize the growth rate in future cash flow growth rates. And if the company can do that, and if the market realizes that, they will be able to maximize the value of the company. They'll maximize the enterprise value of the company. So that's the technology side. And these companies, you know, I don't look at any real difference between technologies and products. Because products are technologies, technologies are products. They have attributes, you sell them into a marketplace. The client wants a service, I'm willing to sell them the service if they want an actual tangible product, to sell them a tangible product. The next one is the product adoption cycle. All products go through these phases. Now this is taken from your marketing literature. Okay? This was taken from operations research. This is taken from the marketing literature. And it's very similar, but it's different. When you hear and talk to individuals at the business level, these are the conversations that they're having, this is the stuff that they're talking about, okay? You know, everything that you're learning in your courses are totally applicable. That's why you really need to focus on your grades and do really well, because you don't want to miss anything, okay? So the first phase within the product adoption cycle is the innovator. So I'm a fintech company, I'm basically launching a payment system. I'm in the innovator phase, I'm burning through a ton of cash, my NPV is negative, I'm trying to get the scale, I'm trying to get adoption here. So I'm stuck here, and it takes a while. But now through the use of social media, telecommunications, cell phones, you know, Facebook, other types of social media outlets, I can get adoption very quickly for my products, a lot quicker than I could, you know, 10, 20 years ago. So once you get through the innovator stage, then you're going to move into what is called the hockey stick. And basically your sales and your revenues and your costs are going to increase exponentially. this is where everybody wants to be, is in here. They want to get to scale as quickly as possible. So they want to get into the early majority adoption and start to scale as fast as possible. And this is where you're still probably, if you look at Uber and some of these, they're still burning cash, right? But they're spending a lot of cash and they're raising billions of dollars in the public markets to burn cash to scale on a global basis. And then eventually be like a Microsoft or other companies that then start to generate earnings, retained earnings, and then give it back to the shareholders and become a monopoly at some point. So this is your early majority. This is your early majority adoption. And then products at some point in time move into the majority phase. And pretty much everybody, who owns an iPhone has bought an iPhone. And then you have the late majority. And then you got the laggard. These are the people who wait till the end. Now, you can't build a business model, you can't build a company based on these three. Okay, maybe here, but you can't do it here. So if you're a one product pony, you're not gonna last. You're gonna flame out, burn. You'll probably go under. So the goal is to be able to develop new products, constantly introducing new products to market. Once you've exploited the market on your earlier products, you got your clients locked in, now you do another version. You got them locked in. Windows 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, Cisco, whatever it is. Again, if you can generate consistent revenues by introducing new products and services, particularly in financial services, consistently over time, the market will recognize and you will be able to execute on a revenue growth path. And if you can do this and the market assumes that you can do this consistently over time, they're going to assume that you're going to be able to maximize the growth rate of the cash flows forever and maximize the value of the firm. Okay. What am I doing on time?
7 minutes.
Okay. The next one is financial feasibility. Before you even start to design a new product or process, you got to figure out, and this is where the finance people come in, you got to figure out, is it feasible? How much is it going to cost to develop these products? What is the total cost? How much is it going to cost to advertise the new product? Those are all sunk costs. So you're going to have to conduct a financial feasibility analysis. Buy, do I build, do I merge, do I find another company? So I'm going to be calculating the PV, NPV, IRR, break even, and other metrics to be able to see, should we do it? Is our IRR significantly above our cost of capital? And we got to take into consideration sunk costs, process, cash flow, growth rates. And that's where you, as your Excel modeling skills come in to be able to do these projections. And then the last is firms that are good at all this stuff. Know when to enter markets. Let's do it. Also know when to exit markets. And they have strategies around that. And those that are entering and exiting, I'd say the VCs are pretty good at this. And other startups, they're looking to get bought out by public or private equity firms, is they're looking towards the capital event. We'll build it, and if we keep it inside the firm and it's going to add to the enterprise value of the company and increase the stock price, we're going to keep it. but there may be a arbitrage play, where basically we can sell the company, or maybe to a private equity firm, take the capital and go do more products. Or what we can do is we can spin out the company through an initial public offering, because the company is worth more in the public markets than it is internally, inside the firm as a contribution to enterprise value. So we have to be looking at capital events. And these need to be rules-based. If you talk to some of the VC people, there's people who have been doing it for 20, 30, 40 years. A lot of them do it based on gut feel, not based on rules. So basically, you're eliminating the emotional aspects associated with making the decision to spin off the company. So it needs to be rules-based to decide to get in. It's got to be rules-based to decide to get out. The other is execution. When you decide to get in and you decide to get out, you've got to execute flawlessly. If you mess it up, you're going to make a mistake, and it's extremely costly. You may not be able to get in, you may not be able to get out, because you screwed it up. Okay? And it could be PR, it could be HR, it could be all kinds of things. And you need clear metrics. You need clear benchmarks to make these decisions. And then lastly, you got to make decisive decisions and know that the decisions that you're making are correct. And that's where experience comes in, and that's where, spending 4 years here at the university, at the college, to gain the knowledge, to know that when you do have to make a decision, you're going to do the analysis, you're going to make a decision, either go or no go, and you're going to make a decisive decision and know that the decision that you're making is correct. Not only based on your knowledge, but also people around you will say, yeah, let's go. All right? So that's it.